Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag HowiGotCustody. I want to talk about an argument I haven't really thought of before. Um, a lot of times, this thing is piecing different arguments and points together and piecemealing it, slapping it together, different things that I've said, and combining it when you start to understand the overall purpose of family court and what they're supposed to be doing. So, in this case, I was just talking to somebody and I kind of came up with an argument on the fly that I would use in court. If there's actually DV or domestic violence in the case, now Washington State, RCW 26.09.191, subsection 2, so 191.2 says if there's domestic violence, the court has to put restrictions on the parent. But the restrictions could be no overnights, supervised visitation, just make sure visitation exchanges, you're not near the person that was the victim or whatever. But also, if you scroll down from 191 down to subsection 2N, I was talking subsection 2A and 2B that says you have to have restrictions. If you scroll down to 2N as in Nancy, then that section says that if the 191 issue, because that talks about domestic violence, child abuse, molestation, sexual misconduct, or stuff like that. Those are mandatory reasons, and abandonment of a kid. If the court finds any of that to be true, they have to put restrictions. You scroll down to 2N as in Nancy. It says there that there's an exception. If the court finds that issue or problem is so remote and so far removed from the children, then in their welfare, then they can make an exception to this. So let's say there was a domestic violence incident. It was 5 years ago. It was before the kids were born. And then you had kids and you got divorced and the person's like, oh, I'm a domestic violence victim. And you make an argument, say that was so far removed and so remote and the person's never harmed the kids. And the other parent says that they're not a danger to the kids. There's no reason to put a 191 restriction of domestic violence restriction on the parent. Anybody in any other state can say, hey, look, Washington, we don't have a mandatory law like most states I've seen. The factors in the law. This is why you guys got to read the statute and the factors. The factors in the law say that the court has to consider whether there's been violence. That's all it says. It doesn't say you have to put restrictions. So when you have a court case in Florida, Michigan, or whatever, if it doesn't say mandatory restrictions, then you could have domestic violence. They don't have to put restrictions on the parent. They could just say, okay, you're restrained from the other parent. So let's say you're down there and they're saying, well, the father hit the mother in front of the kids, and so we have to put restrictions and supervised visitation 2 hours or whatever. So then you could say, look, there's no mandatory restriction under our law. If you look at Washington State, they have a mandatory restriction, but even then they have an exemption under their RCW 2609 19. If you type RCW, Revised Code of Washington, RCW 26.09.191, 2B, 2A and B, and then you scroll down, they make it mandatory you put restrictions, but then they still have an exception because they recognize some cases are different. Some cases the person, redeemed themselves or they got better, or maybe they were drunk and now they're clean and sober. There's circumstances where you don't have to put restrictions. So if our progressive neighbors way up in the Pacific Northwest say that there's an exception, there can be an exception here when it's not even mandatory in the first place. But then also, here's the thing. Here's what I would argue. The court's number one allegiance is to the welfare and the best interest of the children. Is it best for the children to have both parents or not? Of course it's not. Is it best for the child to be in a peaceful home where there's no toxicity and no violence? Yes. So we need to balance those interests. So there's an interest to protect the child and for safety and for peace and tranquility and no toxic environment and no violence. But there's also the basic life need of them having a parent, okay, which is only exceeded by food, water, and air. So if a kid eats junk food, you don't say, oh, they're eating junk food and eating bad, so let's punish them and they can only have water now and no food at all. If a parent hits another parent, or if a dad slams a phone and the mother's scared, that's defined as domestic violence in Washington, because if she say that he did something that scares her, that is domestic violence. Okay? So that being said, um, the great need of the children for both parents to feed their soul, their emotions, their spirit, their mind, their psychological issues, that need is way up here. The need for protection from another incident of domestic violence is maybe it's right here. Okay, there's no gauge or barometer on what that actually is or what people know it to be. So, but we know that the best interest in both parents and the need of that is huge, because when kids don't have both parents or a broken home, they're more likely to have all kinds of problems. So why would you say, okay, there was an incident and the mom or dad made a mistake and hit somebody, we're going to eternally punish the kids and they're not going to have a parent in their life? You know, I mean, you know, but I never hear any attorney ever argue this. Are we going to eternally punish the parent? How long is this going to last? How long do the kids suffer? They need to be fed and nourished a relationship with both parents. That goes without saying. So how long do you punish somebody? Do you just get it indiscriminately, do it without anything, any scientific basis or data for it? It's just somebody's opinion or some judge's opinion or some. The kids automatically suffer without a parent. Kids who are abused still want their parents because that's still their parent and they still have a need for love from them. Okay? So you don't necessarily want to eternally punish a kid because of a mistake somebody made. Now, if it's vicious and they're relentless and they're beating the snot out of somebody every single day, then then there's a huge problem. That's different. But I'm talking about usually most of the cases where there was one incident, maybe two, and like, do we balance the need and say, okay, the parent has suffered enough with the supervised visitation? What's the purpose of this? Ask the court, what's the purpose of this? Are you trying to get the person better? Are you trying to punish them? Are you just trying to routinely slap supervised visitation because that's your routine? Are you looking out for this is going to help the children? Because it's not. Even though it's an unfortunate situation or somebody did commit domestic violence, it's not helping the kids to be deprived of that parent totally. And you can make it for, you don't have to have 2 hours of supervised visitation. You can make it for a safe environment. If the person, bumped into somebody or slammed the phone or scratched somebody, if they go out to a park in public and the kids play and have fun and do just fine with the parent, yeah, they saw something, but we see our parents do stuff all the time that are bad or mistakes. So they should be eternally punished for that? Are you going to and you're really punishing the kids because you're taking away a basic life need because of something that somebody said in the law is worthy of eternal punishment. The criminal justice system looks at the prison or jail system to be for punishment, for rehabilitation, or for coercion. I forgot what the other legal principles are, but one of them is rehabilitation. So even the criminal justice system where you're criminally convicted, a lot of the time in family court, all they do is make a finding, civil finding, that you committed domestic violence by preponderance of evidence. If the criminal justice system looks to reform people and make them better, how come this court doesn't? Is this court going to eternally punish the parent, which punishes the children? So the great basic life need of a child to have these things, both parents involved, the nourishment of a parent, like let's say dad has 2 hours of supervised visitation, the kids are being deprived either way. So you need to balance your desire for safety with what the kids are being deprived of. And then are you going to, and ask the court, how much longer do we need to do this? Where's the scientific data that shows after 6 months and then a parent is fixed and the kid is fine, you can have unsupervised visitation, or 5 months? Where are you getting this stuff from? Because I guarantee they're just randomly doing stuff with no rhyme or reason. You got to call them on this stuff. And attorneys don't do this stuff. They're like, okay, you said restriction visitation, go get a psych eval, go get anger management, and jump through those hoops for 6 months or a year. Where do you get that from, other than these people make money doing the domestic violence treatment? Where's the scientific data that says if you go through there, everything's going to be fine for the kids, while the kids are suffering without a parent because the dad hit the mom when the kids weren't around, or even if he did when the kids were around? The kids can't heal from that? The kids can't heal from, why can't you have a restrictive thing like don't ever have another incident again, or else this or that? Because if you have an incident, kids' memories are short. They forgive a whole lot of stuff. Why can't the court be as forgiving as the kids who need the parents? The court has an allegiance to the children. Why can't you be forgiving like the children are? That's another thing I never thought of. I just thought about that right now. You have an allegiance to the best interest of the child. The children are very forgiving, and they yearn for both parents. Kids yearn for an abusive parent. They want that a parent to love them still after being abused. They want to reconcile, fix that. They want them to forgive and all that other stuff. But the courts aren't as forgiving as the kids are, and we're talking about the kids and their needs. So this stuff should be argued in court, but nobody even thinks about it because nobody's thinking that hard because nobody cares about your case. They just want to collect $400 an hour and walk through the motions. So those are a couple of arguments I use. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. I mean, and I would use the word redemption too. So are humans unredeemable? Is domestic violence the eternal, like blasphemy of all? Is domestic violence the worst, the epitome of all crimes, where you could just indiscriminately just have that hanging over your head forever, like a drug addict, beat the mom or hit her or something, and now they're clean and sober. Now they have to be eternally punished for something they did while they're under the influence and weak and sick. Or can they possibly get better and change? And if the court thinks that they can't change, where are you getting that idea from? There's been people who have changed. Look at Mike Tyson. Look at how crazy Mike Tyson was. And look at how calm, serene he is. Now, he could kill somebody if he wanted to right now, but he's more laid back than ever. So people can't change. And if you would have run up on Mike Tyson, you better treat him right or respectfully, or, kiss his butt or something might happen, because he was a basket case or easily triggered, or whatever you want to say. But do we really want to punish? Okay, you got to go in there and adamantly say it's automatically making the kids suffer by depriving them of this parent. You don't say, oh, the parent did this bad thing, so the kids are better off now. No, the kids are suffering no matter what. They still need a parent, whether that parent committed misconduct, whether the judge made a good ruling under the law or not. So your allegiance is to the kids, and to seek out and look at all the evidence and seriously consider everything the child needs. The best interest of the child. The children always need both parents. That's the way that we're made. That's the way it is. If you don't believe in, the way we're made, or there being a God out there, then there's just the way. Even the animal kingdom, most of them clamor together. And the most intelligent being out there, orcas, they always move in pods like their whole life. So there's needs for a kid that are basic life needs, and it goes without saying. So when you're going to take something away from a kid, you better have good reason to do it, other than, oh, the law says I can take it away, so let me just randomly do it. You don't have to take that's in most states. You have to consider that. Okay, I'm going to consider that, so I'm going to put some safeguards up, like there better not be another incident again. You have a fight, you do this and that, or you put restrictions like, okay, the parents shouldn't be around each other during visitation exchanges. Problem solved. There will be no more future domestic violence incidents, and the kids can heal while they maintain the relationship with the parent. But they go, oh, let's go extreme and do supervised visitation out of routine, because it's the routine of the culture of this court system to do that. So those are the type of things that I would be bringing up to the court, to unbrainwash the court from them doing the things that way they've always done it, just because they've always done it. Like the example I give, a court system in the South in the 50s, and they got a black defendant in there, or a German court right out of World War II, when a Jewish person is a defendant, they're probably not going to change their MO and how they do stuff and how they look at that person and do the stuff the way they've always done it, with the presumption of guilt in their mind, or not affording them, all the due process or whatever. That's the culture of the court system. So is this domestic violence. Once there's domestic violence, that's a huge, gigantic red flag, because the radical feminists have made it look like the crime of the century, even though it's rare, even though women do it just as much as men. And even if they do it, who's really at fault? What was the root of? And there's so many false allegations of domestic violence, and it's well established among lawyers. You've watched the movie Divorce Corp, the documentary. It's well established. I got a packet defending against domestic violence restraining orders where I talk about all the different quotes out there. Not all of them, but a whole bunch of them. You could Google false abuse claims and find how even Illinois and California bar associations have found that it's used as gamemanship and leverage. Since that happens and there's innocent people in jail, are we really going to risk taking the kids away and depriving them of something they need because of something that might have happened?